Very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. And let me start that this is our maiden presence at the Indaba. And I'm personally and my entire team who have been present here for all these 2 days have enormously benefited from the arrangements and the quality of presentations done by various presenters. And I compliment all the organizers and the staff who have supported this event. May I always say is that it's well begun for Vedanta in terms of putting up our show and a stall in this hall. And we continue to believe that in Africa we have a great future, and I would like to start my presentation. But before I start our presentation, I would like to put this in two segments. First, I realize that Vedanta is new to the African continent and to many of you here because we have been present largely in India and in the UK, where we are listed, as well as in some of our companies listed in New York Stock Exchange. And we have been here in this continent for about 8 years now, essentially starting our journey at Conqueror copper mines in Zambia, and later on with acquisitions of assets in Zinc International from the Anglo Stable, as well as in Liberia, where we have the iron ore assets. So I will split my presentation into two parts and try and cover the Vedanta story first, and subsequently cover the story of the African acquisition. Vedanta, as we mentioned, is a FTSE 100 listed company in London. We got ourselves listed in 2003. We are a young company. We started our journey back in India in 1996. And since then, we approached London for the capital markets in terms of our expansion and diversification story. We have a world-class portfolio of large and low-cost assets, scalable in terms of volume and capacity, and have a long reserve and resource in the assets. Currently in Africa, we have invested since 2005, $4 billion in various projects, which I'll cover in my subsequent slides, and committed to the development of the people, the society, the government, as well as managing to operate these assets in a sustainable way, which basically paves the way for any responsible mining company in this part of the continent. Briefly, to give you an overview of our assets, as you can see that in India we are present in the zinc business in terms of substantial expansion of the Hindustan zinc business, which was divested by the government in 2003. And there we have scaled up the capacity of the Rampur Agucha mines and the Hindustan zinc smelter to a capacity of 1 million ton of metal, including zinc and lead. And the third bullet of silver also is produced largely from India as a byproduct. So both put together, 1 million ton of zinc and lead, along with 16 million ounces of silver, makes this asset one of the jewel in India. And we are having a life of mine of well over 25 years in terms of reserve and resources. The acquisition of the assets of Zinc International from the Anglo Stable happened in the beginning of 2011. And these assets are spread at Black Mountain in the Northern Cape, which is very close to Springbok. The second asset is in a place called Roshpina in the southern part of Namibia, Scorpion Zinc. And the third asset is in Lisheen, Ireland, which produces about 200,000 tons of zinc and lead in Ireland. But I'll restrict our presentations to Africa, so we'll focus on what's happening in Black Mountain in Northern Cape, as well as in the Lisheen assets, the Scorpion assets. Beg your pardon. In terms of oil and gas, in 2011, the acquisition of Cain Energy in India, we are the largest producer, private oil sector producer in India, producing 260,000 kilobarrels of oil per day, with lowest quartile cost of production and 17 years life of R&R. And some of you who are tracking us otherwise in terms of the oil business would realize that we have recently been awarded capacity expansions in India, after which we will at least support 20% of the domestic production of oil for the country. In terms of iron ore, we are one of the largest Indian private sector producers of iron ore through Sesagova, and currently 20.5 million tons of iron ore is the targeted capacity of this plant. And some of you who are tracking the iron ore business are aware that at this point of time there is an iron ore ban in the country, but significant capacity expansions in Sesagova will be part of our journey to invest in Liberia as well. Copper in Zambia has been the first entrance point for Africa for us, and we came here in the year 2004 with the divestment of Conqueror copper mines. And some of you know this was one of the world-class assets in Zambia, producing almost 500,000 tons way back in the year 1993, 1994. And subsequent to that, it went through its own process of restructuring, and this asset had a wonderful deposit in terms of the Deeps project, in which significant investments have been since done in terms of scaling the capacity to 400,000 tons of production with a 24-year life of mine. In aluminum, our journey also began back at home with Balco, which is the Bharat Aluminum Company, which was divested by the government in 2004-2005. And we have significantly scaled up the capacities in aluminum with the capacity ramp-up of 2.3 million tons of aluminum, and as one of the lowest high-class deposit and lowest cost of production in that category. I would like to draw your attention that this capacity of Zinc International at 400,000 tons also considers the much talked about project of Hamsburg, which has been spoken for almost now 20 years in this country. That project is something in which we are significantly interested in developing the project as we speak about it in our subsequent chapters. Since the journey from 2003 began at the London Stock Exchange, we would like to present you the figures quickly to understand the kind of compounded annual growth by which this group has delivered to its shareholders and to all the stakeholders. We have a strong financial profile, diversified in terms of the EBITDA growth from 323 million tons in the year 2004 to a figure of 5.3 billion tons pro forma of 2012. In case of free cash flow, as well as in case of our underlying EPS, the growths have been 32% and 29%, which talks about significant benchmark performances across the metals and mining sector, and we believe we have at this stage significant upsides to various assets and projects that we are embarking on. Our strength in Vedanta has been converting an idea to reality. We believe in execution, and we believe in transforming results in fairly quick in terms of the support to the government, society, and the stakeholders who operate in our vicinity of the business. The pie from 2004 at 320 million tons just after the IPO in London has now grown to a pie of 5.4 billion, encompassing all the various sectors of oil and gas, power, aluminum, copper, zinc, iron ore, and commercial energy. So clearly, what is coming out is that our diversification portfolio must be ranking as one of the best in the industry in terms of its profile and in terms of its diversification, geographic diversification. The point to also remember in this is that almost in the EBITDA pie of 5.4 billion, at this stage, 11% of the revenues are contributed by Africa. But with the growth projects that we will talk about in the subsequent slides, this is the growth engine in which we believe Africa would contribute significantly to the growth of the pie as well as to the share of the pie. Coming to Africa, we are present in four countries, which is Zambia, Liberia, Namibia, and South Africa. We are the largest zinc producers in Africa currently. We produce close to about 240,000 tons of zinc and lead between Scorpion Zinc in Namibia, as well as 90,000 tons of zinc and lead from Black Mountain. We are among the top 3 copper producers of Africa, and we have a large iron ore asset in Liberia. The capital investment done in Zambia has been to the tune of $2.6 billion, and 2 large projects of iron ore as well as the Hamsburg zinc deposit is under progress. Our contribution to fiscus both in Zambia as well as in Namibia have been significant in terms of our share of the government revenues, and close to contribution to society, almost 150,000 people across these 3 countries are directly and indirectly benefited by the investment in the mining. And we are one of the largest private sector employees in Zambia, but suffice to say that the growth projects as well as our interest in these countries believe in not only hiring the best people, but also training and developing them across continents back at India and Australia, where we continue to believe to send our people from Africa, train them and bring them back into this country in a span of 18 to 24 months, where they can acquire higher skills and higher education, higher technology, and be of contribution to our assets in this country. May I therefore draw your attention to the flagship assets of our business, which is Conqueror Copper Mines in Africa. This is one of the flagship assets of Zambia, having 688 million tons of copper reserves and resources, containing 13.5 million tons of contained metal. Conqueror underground mine is one of the richest iron ore mines, copper mines in the world, having 3.55% of grade of copper in the ore, and with 24 plus years of life of mine for this asset. And some of you know Conqueror is also one of the deepest wet mine in the world, where we pump out almost 400,000 meter cube of water per day in terms of sustaining the operation. So it is a challenge to manage high cost, as well as a challenge to manage the high grade and make sure the operation is sustainable. In addition to the vision of mining the copper, we have invested in that country the state-of-art smelter at the Nchanga, which is in between Conqueror as well as Kitwe, somewhere in midpoint. Nchanga smelter is the flash smelter in which we have capacity to beneficiate entire production of 300,000 tons of the mine production and convert them into cathodes. And these cathodes get shipped out of Dar es Salaam and Durban to various markets, including the Middle East. Conqueror Deep Mining Project has come to completion. This project was announced in the year 2005, and a shaft of a kilometer and a half has been sunk in that mine. A new shaft was sunk in Zambia after 70 years, and this shaft got completed in terms of loading from the bottom shaft in October 2012. Fairly, in terms of production growths, we are targeting a production of 200,000 tons of metal in the current year 2012, which is the financial year 12-13 for us, and we are targeting a production of 400,000 tons capacity in the years to come. The cost of production for these operations will be stabilized, and we'll be looking at a performance cost of less than $1.50 per pound as integrated cash cost of this operation. As I mentioned, we are the largest private sector provider in Zambia, and Zambia government remains committed, and part of the shares, they also hold part of the shares of the company, and they are fairly progressive in supporting the entire change migration of the management, change migration of the employees, and of course the philosophy of investment and drive. In terms of the project, in a little bit of detail which I mentioned, Conqueror Deep continues to be the flagship project, where we have sunk the shaft a kilometer and a half, and we have completed the mid-shaft loading in April 2010, and the bottom shaft loading was completed in October 2012. We have started hoisting the waste and hope to complete the development and ore hoisting from the bottom shaft in about 6 to 9 months' time. As far as the smelter is concerned, it's direct flash to blister smelter, conversion efficiency of about 98.6% in terms of metal and 99.6% in terms of sulfur, which is extremely beneficial for various projects around Congo as well as around South Africa, where leaching of copper from some of the other deposits, they directly are fed by the sulfuric acid which is transported from this site. And the only smelter in the world which recovers not only the copper but also the byproduct cobalt in form of a copper concentrate. Now I bring you closer home to South Africa, where we have one of our flagship projects coming up, and the Black Mountain Mine, which has been in existence for over close to 70 years. And this is an underground operation very close to Springbok in Northern Cape, where we produce close to 1.7 million tons of ore, of a polymetallic ore body consisting of copper, lead, zinc and copper and lead. We have basically a capacity of about 2.5 million tons of ore available, and we are also looking at the new resource of 63.8 million tons of the Deeps ore project, very close to the current Deeps mine, which will be progressed in terms of our exploration in the coming 6 to 12 months, so that we are in a position to come back to the market in terms of looking at Swartberg project, which is a project next to the current Deeps ore body, and communicate as to what kind of deposit it is and whether we are in a position to start mining later on during the next year. Drilling has commenced at Swartberg, and I'm happy to say that the drilling program is likely to be completed during the current financial year, and we will drill close to about 50 to 60,000 meters in the current ore body, which has been earlier mined during the goldfields days. Hamsberg feasibility is currently under progress, and this mine, as you all know, is the Hamsberg North mine at 154 million tons of ore reserves, and we are expected that this ore body during the course of the current year and next year would complete the feasibility and take the approval of the board before we announce any project in that side. And we are quite comfortable with this ore body, and some of you know that this ore body also has high manganese, and our metallurgists and our engineers are currently on way to discuss the possibility of treatment of this product, as well as in discussion with smelters in terms of being able to accommodate these high level of manganese which has to be absorbed in the smelting route. Hamsberg East is a lesser known deposit with about 32 million tons of R&R at about 9.8% zinc. Is currently under scrutiny, and we would be able to make further comments on development of Hamsberg East once we have completed further exploration on that asset. Put together, Black Mountain, we believe, has got the capacity to unlock value from the Swartberg project as the deep ore body is closed, and we will also like to ramp up Hamsberg project once the feasibility and technical studies have been completed and board approves this project. At Scorpion Zinc, which is across the border at Namibia, just 5 hours away from Springbok, we are currently having a refinery and a mine which produces the zinc oxide, the only of its kind in the world, where the zinc oxide is converted into zinc ingots. And this mine produces close to about 150,000 tons of special high-grade zinc of the highest quality, and most of it is marketed in the Southern African continent region as well as in the European markets. For the asset in Scorpion had a limited life of mine till 2014-2015 when we acquired this asset, and since then a considerable amount of drilling and exploration work has been completed, and the life of mine of the current asset has been extended till 2016-2017. And as we speak, we continue to believe that there is potential, and we are investing in this asset in terms of exploration. Parallel to this asset, we have another mine next to a neighbor mine which was discovered by Scorpion, and that mine is called the Hargarub, which is again a zinc deposit, and zinc deposit with largely sulfide mineralogy, and therefore we are also attempting to find ways and means to debottleneck our current refinery to also handle oxide on one route and sulfide on the other route, which could be a co-product treatment for Scorpion and extend the life beyond 2017. The status of this project is that we are currently under technical feasibility of the refinery conversion, and the Hargarub mine is currently under extensive exploration, and our partners in this mine are Mrs. Roshpina Zinc, which is a mine which was recently sold by Exaro to Glencore. So we are currently in discussions with them for the development of this prospect. All in all, a positive story for Namibia as well, where we believe that with the investments in Hargarub, there would be an extension of life, and there would be sufficient capacities created to treat and beneficiate the product within Namibia and then export the ingots worldwide. Both put together in zinc, if you add the numbers of the previous charts which I mentioned, 1 million ton in India and about 400,000 tons of zinc, between these assets, we currently are the single largest producer in terms of integrated capacity. Next, but this will be soon, as you know, Glencore and Xstrata mergers have been almost in the final stages of approvals. So they would be at about 1.7 million tons of zinc and lead production, followed by Vedanta at about 1.4 million tons. Finally, let me bring you to a very important asset in which we got invested in 2011. This is the iron ore asset in Liberia. This asset was part of the progress in the country in terms of new investors to be brought into the country, and as you can see in that asset, we have on the extreme left, you can see there are three projects which Vedanta is pursuing: the Mano River project, the Bia and the Bombi Hills. In the center, we have the asset of Bong, which is being pursued by Wuhan Steel from China. And up north at this place is the Mount Nimba mine, which is being mined by ArcelorMittal. So all three put together, we believe that country has a potential to develop 100 million tons of iron ore to export to various parts of the world. And Western Cluster itself is a combination of three deposits, well over 1 billion ton. But as we are embarking on significant amount of exploration, we are happy to share that 48,000 meters of drilling has been completed in this project, and the capex feasibilities and proximity to the port bring in a very low operating cost of $30 to $35 per ton of the ore, and potential ramp up of 27 million tons from that mine. In terms of feasibilities, we are well on its way and to complete not only the mine but also the development of the port of Monrovia, and there would be, as you can see, very light dotted lines, a rail linkage from the top of the port to Monrovia as we progress this development. The first shipment is expected in the financial year 2014, and we are well on target in terms of developing this prospect. Finally, wherever Vedanta has put its footprint, the triangle of sustainability continues to be our spearheading our thought processes, and we have continuously believed that not only in terms of engaging the society where we start operating our new mines and new operations, also bringing strong relationships with the local stakeholders, with the people of the continent, with the people of the government, as well as managing this transition which Africa is going through. And back, if I have to give a simple analogy of this country, that I have come through the difficult days on which India used to struggle in 1960s and 70s, where it was very difficult to borrow money, very difficult to lay any asset in the country. We have come a long way, is only because we continue to believe in investing in the people of that country, developing our resources, and continue to do our project work diligently as we ramp up the business. So our commitment to this continent is exactly the same. We will actually replicate many of our learnings back from India and Australia at this site in terms of not only training the people, but also bringing world-class assets and world-class resources to life within a short period of time. In terms of social community partnerships, may I always mention that health, education, and women empowerment have continued to be one of our flagship supports, in addition to supporting the youth in this area of education as well as sports. Some of our flagship projects in Conqueror copper mines in terms of running the hospitals and running the schools to educate 4,000 children in that country. In Namibia, we also run our schools and clinics in the Roshpina mine area, and also support some of the bright students of the Namibian country to go overseas for training and education, not only in the area of mining, but also in the area of healthcare as well as new sciences, so that they can come back to the country and lead the country for a higher glory. In Black Mountain, we have believed that, and some of you who are in the Northern Cape and who know the intensity of sun, that the blindness and retinal deficiencies in the society have been significant, and we are currently working with our partners of healthcare as well as back from India. We have the eye care who come over to the site and conduct retinal deficiency improvements in terms of a sustainable input to the people of that continent. Finally, for me, it is very important that as we embark on these capacity building as well as the society building, the objective of coming back to Indaba and presenting you a report every year would be a matter of great delight, and bringing you to a complete update of the assets. Thank you very much, and I can understand from my moderator that I must close. So finally, we are summing up in terms of the assets that we continue to lead production and growth across the portfolio, and we would continue to believe in developing the reserve and resources for the long-term value of these countries. And finally, in terms of investment opportunities, our focus remains in execution of the project and folding up the presentation. Thank you very much. Thank you, Tony.